There are 11 key principles that underpin effective risk management processes that are provided in the Australian-New Zealand Risk Management Standard, AS-NZS 31000. It was in the 2009 version of this standard that the definition of risk was changed from the chance of something happening that can impact objectives to the effect of uncertainty on objectives. But what does this mean? This means that there is now more focus on the actual potential outcomes of uncertainty rather than just the chance of it occurring. This is because uncertainty is inherent in business decisions, and it is therefore more important to focus on the consequences or effects rather than just that something could happen. The standard outlines 11 key principles that are important to sit behind risk management, its processes and framework in order for it to be effective. Have a think about what might happen if every decision involving risk requires the completion of a stack of paperwork and a checklist that must have everything ticked off. This will make the risk management process very inefficient and is unlikely to assist the organisation in creating value. And although the process is designed to protect value, because it is such a laborious task, it may be completely ignored or responses falsified. This can result in risk that should be managed not being managed and can actually destroy value. Therefore, it is important that risk management contributes to the creation and protection of value for the organisation. That is, that it should help the organisation to achieve its objectives and not be too much of an administrative burden such that it does not actually assist with effective risk management. If an organisation sets its strategy to be a cost leader in its industry and implements an outsourcing strategy for a key input material, but does not consider the risks associated with this before starting, what could happen? What we would find is that the organisation could face significant operational and financial risks relating to the quality and delivery of the material and potential foreign exchange or commodity price fluctuations. If these are not considered early in the planning process, then it is unlikely that actions to reduce the likelihood of the risk occurring or the severity of the consequences will be put in place early enough to be of much use. Think about it this way. If this supply contract is transacted in US dollars and 6 months into the supply contract the Australian dollar has weakened considerably to 80 US cents, then taking action to hedge against further drops in the dollar will not be as effective as if it had been done 6 months earlier when the Australian dollar was stronger, and a forward exchange contract could have been entered into at a rate of 1 Australian dollar to 85 US cents. So we need to make sure that risk management is not an afterthought. It should form an integral part of both operational and strategic level planning and activities. And it should be a part of decision making in the organisation. Think about uncertainty. It is inherent in many decisions, but can sometimes be overlooked. For example, interest rates are currently low, which enables many people to take out large mortgages to buy property. But if uncertainty relating to future interest rates is not thought about and considered now, then they may not be able to meet the required payments in the future if rates increase significantly. Therefore, it is incredibly important that an organisation clearly and explicitly addresses this uncertainty with respect to its objectives, for its risk management processes to be truly effective. The more clearly and explicitly that uncertainty is identified and assessed, the more likely it is that the impacts can be controlled. Consider an organisation where there is no structured risk management process, and any potential risks are identified and assessed in an ad hoc manner, and in many cases not considered at all by those who do not believe risks are an issue. By being systematic, structured and timely, an organisation's risk management framework will be more effective as it will be applied consistently across the organisation. This also means that the risk management processes are more efficient and information will be more reliable. This is why the 5th principle relates to risk management processes being systematic, structured and timely. Consider that you are a chemist working for a pharmaceutical company and need to combine exact amounts of chemicals to create medicines. If you were to use a really old set of scales, how likely is it that your measurements would be accurate and the product manufactured exactly to required specifications? This likewise applies when you're using information. Risk management processes need to use the best available information. Using outdated or irrelevant data or information will mean that your risk analysis and therefore management will not be as effective as it could be, and worst case, could result in poor decisions. Let's think about if we were going to apply a risk mitigation strategy from an accounting firm to a construction company building a 30-storey apartment complex. Do you think that the risks and the controls used by the accounting firm would be useful for the construction company? Is it possible that anything really important could be missed? So it is also very important that an organisation's risk management framework is actually tailored to the organisation. It needs to match the organisation's risk profile. There is not a lot of point using a generic framework if the organisation is extremely risk averse or happy to make riskier decisions to increase potential benefits. An organisation's culture is going to have a big impact on how risks are identified and managed in an organisation. If we go back to the accounting firm, you would expect that most people will be rather risk averse and likely to identify potential risks and be diligent in implementing controls. Whereas on the construction site, it is much more likely that there will be tradespeople who are not too fussed about risks, don't identify them, and potentially take shortcuts that are much more risky. Therefore, it is also important that the risk management process takes into account the organisation's culture and considers the people in the organisation. Activities undertaken within an organisation will almost always involve people, and culture will play a big role in the way risk management occurs. How likely do you think employees will be to follow risk management processes and understand them if they're not told about them? This is considering the extreme view, but if staff and other stakeholders are not included in the process and kept informed, then 1, they are unlikely to understand what is required of them, and 2, if they do not feel included, they are more likely to ignore process requirements. Furthermore, staff, particularly frontline staff, can provide incredibly important insight that can help make risk management more effective. So the principle relating to transparency and being inclusive refers to the engagement of stakeholders throughout the risk management process. That is, that everyone is included in the process and that the risk management methods used and framework is transparent and clear for any interested party to view and understand. If we think about what uncertainty inherently is, it is constant changes. Therefore, we need to ensure that our risk management processes are dynamic and able to change with changes in the external or internal environment. Part of this means that they should be constantly reviewed to ensure that processes and controls are continuously improving. This brings us to the last 2 principles, that the risk management process should be flexible. It should be able to change as the environment and circumstances change, and it should also be responsive if the risk appetite of the organisation changes for any reason. For example, if a bank sets a covenant on gearing levels. And finally, you should never stop trying to improve. This doesn't just refer to your risk management framework and processes. It means that risk management as part of the organisation's culture should help with continuous improvement in the organisation's activities. It is important that these principles underpin any risk management processes, framework or strategy to ensure that it is as effective as it can be and to help protect the organisation from detrimental risks and so that any beneficial risks can be taken advantage of.